People often say, I'm not an angry person. That sounds like self awareness. Most of the time, it isn't. It's fear. Fear around what would happen if you actually said what's true. Anger doesn't show up randomly, it shows up in moments like you leave a conversation still thinking about it. Something felt off, and you brush past it. A line got crossed. Something mattered, and you let it go anyway. Instead of listening to that signal, you learn to override it. And at some point, anger got labeled unattractive, too much, something to control. So you adjusted. You softened your tone. You held things in. You told yourself it isn't worth it. On the surface, that works. You avoid conflict, stay easy to be around, things move on quickly, but it doesn't actually go anywhere. It shows up differently. Tension in your body you can't place. Conversations you replay later thinking about what you should have said. A slow kind of exhaustion from letting too much slide. And eventually, it turns inward. Unprocessed anger becomes self-hate. Not all at once, in small, quiet ways. You question your reactions. You downplay what bothers you. You take responsibility for things that weren't yours to carry. You weren't just disconnecting from conflict. You were disconnecting from yourself. Anger was never the problem. It was the signal. Ignoring a signal long enough doesn't just make it disappear. It either builds or it buries itself deeper. Because what looks like anger on the surface usually isn't just anger. It's disappointment you didn't say out loud. It's feeling overlooked in a moment that actually mattered. It's the realization that something wasn't okay and you acted like it was. That's why it feels uncomfortable. It's pointing at something real. And at some point, the question needs to change. Not how do I get rid of this, but what is it showing me? Anger shows up when boundaries are crossed. Not just by others, by you. Moments when you stayed quiet when you needed to speak. Moments when you agreed just to keep things smooth. Moments when you ignored yourself just to avoid tension. That's where things shift. You don't need to act on anger to take it seriously. You can feel it without turning it into damage. Feeling it doesn't make you difficult. It makes you honest. And honesty changes how you move. You start noticing patterns where you overextend, where you tolerate more than you should, when you keep things easy at your own expense. Once you see that clearly, you don't react louder. You respond earlier. You say what you mean before it builds. You set limits before resentment forms. You stop explaining away what actually matters to you. That's what it means to use anger well. Not explode, not suppress, recognize it. Because anger can be protective, not in how it looks, but in what it's trying to keep intact. Your limits, your truth, your sense of self. When you start treating it that way, you stop feeling out of control. You feel clear. You're not reacting late. You're responding when it actually matters. That changes how people experience you. But more importantly, it changes how you experience yourself. Stop second guessing what you feel. Stop minimizing what matters. You stop calling yourself easygoing when what you've really been is quiet. And this is the part most people hesitate on. Because honesty has consequences. People might push back. Things might shift. You might lose versions of connection that only worked because you stayed silent. So the real question isn't, is anger bad? It's what does it cost you to keep ignoring it? Because at the end of the day, you weren't avoiding anger. You were avoiding what it would force you to say.